Ladies and gentlemen, good evening on this very special event. Welcome. This is Urbanism Live, an online event of the Hungarian Society of Urban Planners. Today, we are celebrating a historic moment as we are in front of wide audiences all around Central Europe with our project in B4 regions founded by the Visegrad Fund, to whom we thank for their support. B4 Regions is initiated by a unique partnership of all the major associations dealing with urban planning in the 4 Visegrad countries. Although we have known each other individually, we have never had the opportunity to work with each other. So this is a first chance for us to work together and to trigger new methodologies and tools in urban planning. This project is really important as we always realize again and again our common historic background, our special common present problems, and we always get astonished by the similarities of our future perspectives and future plans as well. We share a motivation to get urban planning tools better and to help urban planning to be more effective in the Visegrad 4 countries. In this project, therefore, we set the aim to examine our similar urban planning cultures and to trigger new answers to our common problems. So today we are introducing 3 of our partners in Visegrad 4 countries. First of all, let me introduce you the Society of Polish Planners, which association will be presented by Tomasz Majda and Piotr Lorenz today. The Czech Association for Urban and Regional Planning, who is presented by Rezach today, and Spectre from Slovakia, who is represented by Maroš Finka in this evening. And finally, I would like to introduce Derž Csaba, our colleague and vice president in the Hungarian Society of Urban Planners, and I will also give the word to him in order to share the greeting remarks of our president, Dr. Géza Salami. Please, Derž, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Let me be a bit more informal and share with you the first thought when actually Flori asked me what to speak or what would be the topic of this project when we applied for the Visegrad countries. And I thought to myself that actually I remember the time when I was a young architect student, and I thought to myself that how envious I am for the big modernists like Le Corbusier, because they lived in a very exciting moment. And then later on, I realized that we are living in a very exciting moment. And it is exciting because what we are doing, urban planning, is going through such a massive transformation, as massive as it used to go through during the modernism. And I think we share the same history. The Visegrad countries share the same history. So this past 30 years after we embarked on the democratic transition, we started off the democratic transition. We embarked the same trajectory. And it might be very exciting to see how we interpret this, how we experience this. Because I think this is a historical moment also, a historical period also in the history of urban planning, and students will look at these times just as much fascination as we used to. So this is only I think my personal interest to this story, and I hope that we will see very exciting interpretations of these 30 years, and we can share exciting experiences with each other. Thank you, Flori. your phone. Turn on your microphone, Corey.
Oops, I'm so sorry. I was too much conscious about not making any background noise. Sorry. So I'd like to give the floor to Tomasz, who is going to introduce the Society of Polish Town Planners, and will give you an insight about the Polish situation and transformation of the Polish planning system.
Thank you, Flora. Good evening, everybody. As we all know, all our planning systems are now in transition, are in transition for the last 30 years. So I will show the changes that are ongoing in different levels of the planning system. So I will start with the administrative division because there are also some changes in that field. So we have one national level, of course, and it's divided in 16 provinces. Previously, it was 49 provinces. So we changed this regional policy. Then we have almost 380 counties, and almost 2,500 of municipalities, which provide its own planning policies. So there was a huge shift in this field, and we have almost well, a little bit more than 900 cities and just one metropolitan area. So we introduced planning in functional areas in 1928, but just for a few years. And then we skipped this possibility, although we tried. So in 2015, there was a Metropolitan Act that allowed to establish such metropolitan areas with some planning forces. And after change in our government, the next government said that it was just for election purpose, and the Metropolitan Act was repealed a year later. So in fact, we don't have this metropolitan area in a normative system right now, but we have one metropolitan area, Silesia. In fact, we have 5 administrative levels in theory, in practice 4, 4 planning levels in theory, in practice 3, and 2 types of public authorities, which is government and territorial authority. So there is a strict division between normative system and planning system, and the planning system is based on territorial authority. So there is this voivodeship or province level, which has 2 institutional representatives, voivod or governor, which is a part of the government, and marshal, which is a representative of territorial authority. Then we have, or we have not, metropolitan level, and then there is a county level with starost. I put it in a different color because they don't have planning forces. That level is skipped in the planning system, but they have money to coordinate municipal policies. So what was the main goal of this reform in the 90s was giving the local authorities this commune level planning force as a main actor. So and it is this special planning is the first among all territorial authorities' own tasks. The other goal of building the new planning system 30 years ago was subsidiarity. in governing instead of hierarchy. So this subsidiarity is clear in this level, municipal level of planning force. But the other part of this subsidiarity says that if local authorities are not dealing with this task, they should have help from the higher level. So we have this several level planning system up to now. And from the other point of view, we have this sustainability point of view, which demands having such a field where all these policies, environmental, economy, and social cross, and they cross on a common ground, on the land, and in our system we have and I will going back to that. Several documents. There is the concept of spatial development of the country on the national level, voivodeship or province spatial development plan, and have or not framework study of the conditions and directions of spatial development of metropolitan union, and then on the local level, study of the conditions and directions of spatial development of the municipality and the local plan. So on the local level, this study defines the policy, and local plan, which is a regulatory document, is a basic tool for implementation of the policy. And then on the economic field, we had a long and medium term national development strategy, and it was combined with the planning document on the national level, then the voivodeship development strategy and the municipal development strategy, and these links are shown in all the administrative levels. On the social parts of this system, we have different programs, for example, housing programs, and they are closely combined with economy system. And then we have municipal revitalization program, which in Poland is very socially connected. It's less formal, more social. And it's very close to the planning system because one of the tools is revitalization local plan. So I put it this link also to that point. And then we have this environmental system or subsystem. Right now we have, for example, adaptation plans to climate change. They are implemented for bigger cities, and then and they are rather independent from the planning system, from the spatial planning system. And then we have ecophysiography, environmental impact assessment, and they are combined with every spatial planning document. Oops, sorry, I skipped something. I didn't put the arrow from that element to from this green or environmental part to the concept, but this concept for the national scale also establishes ecological network in the scale of the country and many other things. So it was a little bit other kind of document. And unfortunately, we have also planning permissions, which are implemented to the system by planning acts, but they are based not on planning documents, but only on a normative subsystem. So only on the law, not local, but general law. And what is the pity that they decide about the shape of the space in Poland, because there are about 170,000 of planning permission per year in Poland, and 250 building permission. So most of the building permissions are based not on planning system, but on planning permission, which is based not on planning system. So there is a problem in that system. So we are on transition. And what was introduced by the government was the first was repealing the concept on the national scale. Now this is not such a document, because now the responsibility for space, for the policy is based on the Council of Ministers, and based on the Act on the Principles of Development Policy, it was also abolished the long-term national development strategy, leaving just mid-term. So we don't have long-term strategy planning nor spatial planning in the scale of the country now. I don't know, we decided we prefer spontaneous planning, I guess. So we don't have this level. And the Ministry of Funds and Development, Department of Funds and Regional Policy points out that on the regional level, we should also abandon this voivodeship spatial development plans. And it is supposed to be done during the next 4 years. So these spatial aspects, I changed the direction of the arrow, because these spatial issues will be implemented somehow to the voivodeship development strategy. So the next step is under the process now. The study of condition and directions of spatial development of the municipality, which is the basic document on level of the municipality level, local level, is going to disappear because it's going to be implemented in the municipal development strategy. And I will follow the next. No, okay. So we will have this economic level or part of the system with few documents, and this provincial or voivodeship level and municipal level will have some functional spatial structure issue that in fact nobody knows how to deal with this, because it's the task of the different ministry. So the ministry that is that's working on the spatial planning system moved this policy part to the competences of different ministry, which says that the strategy is not an obligatory document. So we had a planning system that had the possibility to integrate planning on the basis of the common ground. And now we have a very strong economic part of the system with some elements of space in them. So the local plan is now a tool of implementing the economic strategy, and then and it's called general plan now because it will have a much more reduced number of provisions. It will be very general document, and then taken from this social part, we have also reintroduced urban standards. And this also, I put it here outside because they will also be part of a normative system, not a local system, but it could be somehow changed by the local authorities. So what is especially visible in this, there is a shift. We had a system that was integrated by procedures, And now we decided to integrate the system inside documents. But it's, well, in fact, we lost spatial planning system, because the only document that was left is a general plan as a tool for completing the economic strategies. And what is visible in the program, it's complete, it's disintegration of environmental economic system. And the last slide is scheduled because this, well, the National Reconstruction Plan is based on European Union funds with Next Generation EU. So it has some limits in time. So the government said that we will have New Deal, but in my opinion, it's more New Order, and among other orders is also New Spatial Order. So the preparation of the reform is supposed to be finished this year, and passing the act by the parliament on the beginning of the next year. And then there is an implementation period for 3 years. So for the first time in this 30-year history, the implementation of idea of changing the system is supported by money. So all this implementation process is supported by European Union funds, staff training and preparation of documents. So it is possible that it will appear somehow. So thank you very much. I think I didn't skip the time too much.
No, not at all. Thank you very much, Tomasz. It's really striking. On one hand, the very striking similarity of our system change and yours. On the other hand, it's also very interesting that we are facing usually very typically very same problems of how to integrate the different fields of policy, and on the other hand, the different levels of spatial planning into the levels of governance. So I think this is a topic we will also discuss in later on after the presentations in the roundtable session. So thank you very much. And one more remark before we gets ready, that it's really striking that I know the governance levels and the names in Polish governance system of novels I've read like 15 years ago. So our next presenter is Rezach, and he's going to talk about the Czech system. The floor is yours.
So, do you see my screen? Hello.
Not yet.
I just wait there. So, my name is Rezach, and I prepared the presentation together with a colleague of mine, Josef Morkus. He's also a member of Association of Czech Town Planners, and we will share the presentation. At the very beginning, we would like to show you how complicated is the...
Sorry, we still not see your screen.
Okay. Once more.
There is this green button on the.
Yeah, that's looking good. Yeah, perfect. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Sorry. So at the very beginning, I'd like to show you what bubbles in a Middle European DNA of Czech people. So you can see that there is an influence of all the nations, not only we speak today, but the range of influence is much wider. And we really do appreciate that Hungarian association put us together to share our experiences. Thank you very much once more. Czech Association for Urban and Regional Planning is a rather small organization. We have about 250 professionals, and we try to be active on also in the international level. And we organize every year conferences and try to be also a point to help our ministry or municipalities to solve a special planning issue. I will now hand over to Josef to share with you, let's say, the principle of our planning system. And Josef, I will lead the slides.
Thank you, Vít. Good afternoon from my side as well. In the spatial planning system, we have two kinds of documents. Some of them are binding and the other ones are non-binding, or we call them background documents here. The background documents, they are analytical documents done on the level of the state, on the level of a region, and on the level supra-municipal. And then we have another non-binding type of documents, planning studies, who can be of a very, very different type. It can be from a small area up to a region or up to a corridor for a technical infrastructure. In the level of binding documents, there are four types that I will mention later. Regarding the division of the Czech Republic, the state is divided into 14 regions. One of them is the capital city of Prague. And we are even better, or maybe even worse than Poland, because we have more than 6,000 municipalities, 6,258 municipalities altogether. The advantage of our planning is that 93% of these municipalities, they have a local plan. If we come back to the system of planning documents, for the state, we have a planning document which is called the Spatial Development Policy. It's prepared by the ministry and approved by the state government. It's more kind of strategy. It is not really a plan. You can see it's more a scheme than a real plan. And we discovered that the problem is that for the projects of state importance, we do not have a very flexible plan where we can fix this state projects. So in the future, we plan to prepare a more detailed plan on a state level. The next level is a regional level. As I mentioned, we have 14 regions, and each of these regions, they need to have a regional plan. It's prepared by the regional authority, and it's approved by the regional assembly or regional council. You can see it goes much more into detail, and it includes mainly the technical infrastructure and transport infrastructure, but also, for example, the system of greenery. Then the most important plan is the plan on the local level. You can see an example here. We call it a local plan or land use plan, however you want. It's not obligatory to have this plan, but as I mentioned before, most of the municipalities, they have such plan. It's prepared by an authority, and it's approved by the assembly or by the council of the municipality. As I mentioned, it mainly deals with the land use, but also with the spatial arrangement, with the volumes of blocks, etc. This is the most important plan for decision making, because every building or planning permit needs to be in accordance with this local plan. Then we even have a more detailed one, which we call a regulatory plan. Again, we do not need to prepare such plans. If it is prepared, then it is binding for decision making. But unfortunately, this type of plan is not very frequently used. We have only several hundreds of them. And even for development areas, it's not necessary to prepare such plans, unlike the situation that we saw in Hungary or in Poland. So we do not need to have this plan for decision making. So most of the decisions, as I mentioned, happen according to the local or land use plan. Some problems. We shifted the assessment of accordance with the local plan or regulatory plan to planning authority body. Before it was the building office. A few years ago, we changed it to the planning authority, which brought, I would say, better quality of assessment. But on the other hand, it's much more formal. It's much longer than it was before, and it takes more time than it did before. So in the future, we are thinking of moving this back to the building offices. For other problems that we face, as I mentioned, the local plans, they are mainly based on land use. There are some trends in some municipalities or by several architects that they want to base it more on a character of the area than on the land use. My personal point of view is that this is inseparable. So we need to think both of the land use and, on the other hand, of the volumes and character of the area. Currently, the Czech Republic prepares a new building act, which will deal also with the problems of spatial planning. As you can see, it's done in a very, very high speed, and unfortunately, we are afraid this will be seen on the quality of the plan of the law. But regarding spatial planning, most of the documents will remain as they are, and the most important changes are in the building permitting. Nowadays, in the building permitting, we have two phases, the planning permit and then the building permit. In the future, they will be merged into one. And also different authorities which take care of protecting different public interests, they will be merged into the building office. And there are also very important issues that need to be discussed, and Vít will tell you more about them.
Yes, I'm very sorry for technical problems with the presentation, but we would like, because we don't want to go in detail into the changes, which, as you see, are done in a very short time, and nobody of us knows actually what will be adopted and what not. But in parallel, there is a very fruitful ongoing discussion on some let's say long-term changes in our planning system, which regard strategical planning, use of IT technologies, and also connection of financial issues and economic tools into the spatial planning. And those, let's say, three critical questions would be of our main interest during this project, and particularly during our conference in autumn in Hungary. So that was a very brief short view into the situation in the Czech Republic. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Vít and Josef, for this very interesting presentation. We had some laments in the chat in between that usually in Hungary we have complaints about the huge number of municipalities we have in Hungary. But now we see that the Czech Republic is surely the winner in this category, because the Czech Republic has more or less the same amount of population, maybe half a million more than Hungary, but you have twice as much municipalities as we have. So congratulations to the solution. And let's move on. Our next presenter will be Maros from Slovakia.
Flori, can I just a quick
Yes,
remark?
of course.
To make a quick remark. Sorry, I just I chatted meanwhile the presentations, and I'd like to highlight some of the issues that I think cross-cutting, and one of them is the number of municipalities, because it was interesting to see. We have a very similar debate about it, basically arguing that we have too much municipalities and too small municipalities, and for this reason they don't have the resource to prepare their own plans.
Yes.
So I think that's an interesting and cross-cutting issue that we might touch upon later on.
Yes, surely this surely results a huge lack of planning capacity. So that's for sure. So let's see what is the situation in Slovakia. Maros,
Thank you very much. I just wrote a remark into the chat that Slovakia is a serious competitor concerning the number of the municipalities. We have over 3,500 municipalities in Slovakia and half of the number of inhabitants in Hungary. So I guess this is something what is common for our countries. To big extent is the heritage from the past, even from our joint history, as it is our joint planning culture, speaking about the land use planning especially. So we are really representing in Europe a very special territory with this common history coming from the Habsburg monarchy, reaching to the history to Maria Theresia with the territorial reform and the first planning attempts. And so it simply developed, and we are really representing one planning culture despite of the years of particular or particularly different development in each country. So I will focus in my presentation not so much perhaps on the specifics in Slovakia, but much more on some points which are the object of our joint discussion, joint interest, and perhaps even joint acts the future. And I am very happy to be the part of this first historical activity. I'm representing academia, the Slovak University of Technology and Spectra Center of Excellence of the European Union, and in the same time, the Association of Urbanists and Spatial Planners of Slovakia. My colleague, architect Martin Baloga, is the president of this association and is our colleague at the university, but in the same time, he is very active in the practice. Historically, again, similar to the other countries, the spatial planning or land use planning or urban planning, urbanism, was embedded in the study field of architecture. So both of us are architects in our education. The graduates from the only Faculty of Architecture in Slovakia in Bratislava. But then in the time I was the head of the Department of Urbanism at the faculty, came the process of the European approximation, which meant for the education of architects certain changes, as the architecture is regulated profession, and it meant the changes in the curricula, and we could see that the education of architects will be not able to meet all the requirements from the current development in spatial development, and decided to move outside of the faculty of architecture, and we are outside of the study field architecture. So we are now representing the study field spatial planning. Very briefly about us, the Spectra is the part of the university, is affiliated to the university as joint working place of leading European institutions and universities in the field of spatial development. And we are very active not only in the research activities, as you can see, but as well as in the real planning activities across all the levels. Starting with the national, we collaborated and I led the work on the vision and strategy of the development of Slovakia 2030, which is the main implementation document for Agenda 2030 in Slovakia. We are working on the territorial development prognosis for Bratislava 2050, and we are even doing the joint activities abroad, as you can see, at the regional level in the smart domain, but as well in the field of integrated territorial development strategies, which are, let's say, very important documents because they are interconnected to the structural funds. This is one of the problems we are facing, and I guess this is not only specific Slovak problem, that the land use planning did not develop towards the integration with the economic instruments. To big extent, it is powerless because the main powerful instruments are outside of the responsibilities. Speaking about the planning system in Slovakia, there are three main pillars of the so-called integrative planning: socio-economic strategic development planning, many times not correctly called in Slovakia as a regional development planning. Then the landscape planning, recently in its integrative form, embedded in the land use planning legal environment, but represented autonomously by different plannings in the responsibility of the Ministry of Environment, and the land use planning as the top in this integration. And the land use planning system is not just about the planning and the plans development, but as well as about the executive management, so the implementation management of the land use planning documentation with the links towards the decision making, designing, and of course with the feedback in the form of monitoring system and information management. So I guess discussing about each part of this planning system needs to be really contextually. What is our problem? And I guess, again, this is not even the problem of our four countries, but European problem is the dominance of this sectoral planning, which is coming from the EU level, from the Brussels, and less powerful integratory position of the land use planning in the comparison with the past. Focusing just on the land use planning, following this logic of the planning system, we have different tools, starting with the inventarization, analytical, and monitoring instruments via the planning procedures. And we know how important now became especially these procedural aspects of the planning, speaking about the transition of the society to a civil society, participatory planning, discussions on the new planning paradigm, the role of planners in the planning systems. And so the planning documents, we as a Central European planning culture are typical with our prospective view. So our planning documents are prospective documents which is to a certain extent big advantage, because for us the term sustainability is an inherent part of our conceptual thinking, unlike the other planning systems in Europe. But on the other side, they are facing big problems of the uncertainties in our prospective planning. Then the decision-making procedures. Still, we have to be aware that we as planners are preparing the political decisions, and in the end, the decision is in the hands of politicians at the local, regional, and national level. And then is this executive part, permission regulations, and other instruments. As I explained already, we have covered by the land use planning all 4 levels: the national, regional, local, and zonal level. In the past, it was a very logic system of different planning documents. After the change came a so-called simplification, which was not in reality the simplification, and the planning documentation and regional, local, and zonal level is called the land use plan, although the content is completely different. It's addressing certain domains, but concerning the content, it's rather different. At the national level, we have the national spatial development perspective, very similar to the European level. And I would like to address some points as we discussed previously, that in the end of our presentation, we will try to appoint some joint problems, joint challenges, which create the basis or even require some joint approaches in the V4 region. So the first, we are facing increased dynamics of transformation processes, which is a bit in the contradiction with the system of our prospective planning and prospective thinking, not only because of the step-by-step shorten innovation cycles, but as well concerning the complexity and direct impact on territories. We are facing different scales of neglected areas. We are facing the problem of brownfields as the areas requiring the implementation of supportive measures from the public sectors. The second point is already mentioned, transformation of our society to a civil society, including the shift from governing to governance, which for us as planners derive the need to adapt our planning system to new planning paradigm, and of course changing the role of planners as the mediators in the planning processes and in the decision making under multiple decision makers. The transformation of the economy towards the knowledge-based economy, and the same at the societal level, requires on one side the new spatial organization, for example, in reflection of the new requirements concerning urban environment and regional environment, framing the spread and creation of innovations. And on the other side, this is a requirement concerning the new planning methods, new planning tools, the demand on place-based and evidence-based strategies and concept, including our planning documentation. And then last but not least, the common denominator for us are global changes, speaking about climate change, demographic changes, and as the colleagues from Poland and Czech Republic already explained, the problem of metropolization, growing the metropoles, and hand by hand growing the disparities between metropole and periphery. My last slide is addressing already mentioned problem of growing uncertainty, frequency and effects of unexpected fluctuation in the development. Just what we like today, the COVID pandemics, how this fluctuation from the outside influence the public spaces, the functioning of city, and this is not just such unexpected catastrophe, but it's more and more the very individual decisions of particular decision makers in the economics. For example, the big investors from England is decided, and the government is happy to get in a city he appointed a factory producing 300,000 cars per year. Among the fields, nearly a village without infrastructure, and it should be ready in 2 years because of expected benefit from the invested money, and so and so. So it's really much more difficult to face such challenges. And a common denominator is as well the European integration, increasing the complexity and diversity. It is not so simply, for example, to plan in the Bratislava metropolitan region, because it's not anymore the Bratislava metropolitan region, is the core of the metropolitan region Vienna-Bratislava, and the decisions in Vienna are influencing both sides of the borders. As the borders, we now can see how sensitive are the borders on one side, and what kind of challenges brought the COVID for managing the flows across the borders, especially in Bratislava agglomeration, where Bratislava really is the center not only for the Slovak territory, but for the neighboring many municipalities in Austria and Hungary, with bigger part even today of the Slovak origin inhabitants there commuting to Bratislava. So really this integration, global view is confronted with this need of place and evidence-based strategies and interventions. And we have to be aware about imbalances and tensions between dynamics in social life against the spatial structural development. The physical structures have the cycles of innovations much longer than the changes in the society, in the economy. So it's the challenge for us to increase the flexibility, adaptability of the structures, speaking about, for example, resilience, the interplay between adaptation and robustness of our structures. And of course, the tensions between available resources and growing demands. And the very last, I already mentioned this lasting problem of dominance of sectoral, in many ties, contradictory approaches in spatial development. Just to mention, for example, the agricultural policy of the European Union versus the environmental policy, or versus integrated spatial development. And all those policies are meeting in the local territory. And all the policies and contradictions are the challenge for our work, because we are responsible for harmonizing different interests in this territory. So it is not difficult, not easy, because on one side we are responsible for something, on the other side we have not proper instruments to do. We have not this decision-making power in many cases. So I guess these are many challenges we have to discuss, because we need really the changes in our policies and in our legal environment. Just last slide about the recent development in Slovakia. We have new ministry since July last year, the Ministry for Innovation, Regional Development and Investment, which should be responsible for the body for spatial planning policies, but for the land use planning is responsible the Ministry for Transport and Construction, for the environmental issues, Ministry of Environment, and for the development of rural area, another one, Ministry of Agriculture. So even this is a mess. Concerning the legal framework, it's very difficult to speak about the recent development because we are expecting the land use planning, which is not prepared at the ministry responsible for land use planning, but at the governmental level, so the office of the government, paradoxically. And nobody knows exactly what is coming to us because it's not properly discussed in the professional community. The same concerning the new law act on building code. The only ministry which is really open for the discussion is already mentioned Ministry for Innovation, Regional Development and Investment, which should prepare a new law act on development as an overarching legal framework for all particular spatial relevant plannings, so spatial land use planning as well as the regional planning, which is expected next year. And I'm responsible at this ministry for this segment. So that's from my side a very brief overview. And I am very thankful to the Hungarian colleagues to take this initiative and to create the environment for a mutual discussion. So thank you very much. Enjoy the day. I'm looking forward.
Thank you, Maros. Can I just add a few thoughts to your?
Of course, you're welcome.
First of all, I think all of us have the problem that there is a legislative process going on, and let's just use this opportunity to articulate our perspective on that. I mean, it's all of us a possibility to present ideas to the government and to steer legislative processes. And this is just a suggestion for everyone.
Yes, I guess this is the added value of this our discussion, because the statement which we'll develop together will have even higher power than individual statements of our associations. Yeah. So this is, I guess, one of the most important expected outputs from our discussions, to appoint clearly what are the challenges and what are the proper answers to the challenges we are facing concerning the development of the legal framework as well. So thank you very much, Dareš, for your underlying this, really. I am enjoying it.
And one more suggestion, because I think we are also in a similar position that we are representing professional bodies, and this is where lessons from the legislative framework are coming to. So let's just try to institutionalize ourselves in this process. I mean, we try to work together with the ministry, with in suggesting them that without the lessons that we can learn as professionals, they can't evidence-based change the legal framework of planning. So this is also my suggestion. And one cross-cutting issue, another cross-cutting issue is that you also mentioned that Slovakia is centralized, Bratislava, and there's the same thing with Hungary, and I think similar issues are in Poland and in the Czech Republic. And I feel somehow that this process is exactly the failure of spatial planning in Central Europe. I mean, I'm coming from a small city from the south, from Pécs, and of course I'm arguing against Budapest because Budapest draws every development potential. And I keep telling that it is because spatial planning as as a governance instrument is not working. So the division of resources and infrastructure developments are not working properly, and it's partly because spatial planning is in a position. And I'm so envious that you have a ministry. We don't have a ministry. I think it's really a cross-cutting issue. I mean, it has to. I think also our. It has to be a general ministry that integrates everything in a government level. So that's why I'm so envious.
If I can briefly react to your last sentence, to be true, I am not very happy about this development with the new ministry, because the idea was similar to our Austrian colleagues to launch this integrative function concerning the spatial planning and the governmental office, as it is in Austria. Because creating the ministry, it means we have the minister who is at the level of other sectoral ministers. So he is not really in the position, although the minister, she is a nice lady, she is a deputy prime minister, but in reality is representing something like sectoral ministry. Is not really the overarching ministry, although perhaps this ambition is there. Yes, so this is a bit danger. And last of my sentence, you mentioned these specifics of the let's say snowball effects of our metropoles. It's Prague, it's Budapest, in Bratislava. I guess, and Vít can add, Slovakia and Czech Republic heritage from the joint history, really a polycentric settlement system. So on one side, we have this polycentric system. On the other side, this snowball effect is not properly regulated because, as you mentioned, spatial planning has not power in this. And I guess what is common are especially the problems of suburbanization development, which is rather unregulated. And in the suburb, there are many of developments which are monofunctional developments without proper infrastructure, which only is supporting the snowball effect because the central city is serving all the territories around, not with the higher ranking services, but with elementary services for them, which brings the collapses and so and so. So I guess the situation is very similar, and this former idea of polycentricity, which was based on a functionalistic structural polycentricity, has been not developed towards the concept, towards the competition with the concept of governance polycentricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the tension now.
Yeah.
Sorry to disturb this very, very fruitful conversation, but I think we should, according to our program, we should move on. And I think the next presenter is Dersh, who will talk about the Hungarian situation. But after that, we can naturally go on with the discussion, because I think what here is happening is actually the celebration of very common problems and issues. So it is so very, very exciting to identify all those cross-cutting issues. So all these topics will be raised in the discussion later on, but now, Dersh, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Can you put the presentation on full screen, please?
Just a second. Is it better?
Not yet.
Not yet. I do my best. I cross then. Is it better then?
Sort of, yes.
Sort of fine. Do you see this diagram? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I start with Mood? Yeah, I think I should
Yes,
start.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
That's again a cross-cutting theme that I would highlight about mood. Is that also? I think Maros said previously that they are leaving architects behind, and they established their own organization, and we are something similar. In fact, I'm an architect as a first degree, by my first degree, but I also left architecture behind, and I became urban planner. But MUT, the Hungarian Society for Urban Planning, is specifically interested in this multidisciplinarity, the other disciplines that have a say and the right to say about spatial planning. And I think this makes us different than the Association of Architects, who are also feel in Hungary that they have something to say about urban planning. Okay. We had different perspectives. What I was suggesting to speak about is, or what I planned to speak about was more a bit about the planning instruments that we are using and how they developed. And I'd like to start with this diagram, which shows the global dynamics of the urban population. You can see that there are differences in pace, but we can sum up simply that cities are the most successful phenomenon of history, because the number of urban population is growing indefinitely. The United States is around 80%. Central Europe is around 60%. I'm just highlighting this because it is exactly showing the reason why we have to speak about spatial planning. Because spatial planning is the tool that can give shape to these dynamics. And if spatial planning fails, then these dynamics goes wrong. And why we should speak about now is what makes us speak about the past 30 years. And I just had this feeling that it's an interesting story. The past 30 years is an interesting story. And then I checked the population, the number of population in mid-sized cities in Hungary. And this is the diagram of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cities, the 10 biggest cities, except for Budapest. And it shows an interesting phenomenon that we think that the democratic transition is a success, but from a peripheral point of view, it is not. From Budapest point of view, it is a success, but from the perspective of the periphery, it's not, because there is a steady decline in the number of population since the past 30 years. I don't say that it's because of the planning system only, but it suggests that we have to speak about these 30 years, and we need to understand how the planning system evolved and what is the problem with that. If we look at how this planning system evolved, we speak about master plans. Why master plans appeared in the planning system? And I somehow think that it's the modernism that defined the master plan. It is that, how should I say, modernism wanted to control the enormous growth that appeared in the turn of the last century during the Industrial Revolution. They had to develop a tool how to control it. And this is the time when the state grows up and the bureaucratic system grew up and defined this regulatory framework that now we use for spatial planning mostly. And what happens over the democratic transition, that this planning system became in scrutiny, or became under scrutiny. The democratic transition undermined the economic legitimacy of the spatial planning system. It undermined the social legitimacy of this spatial planning system. Basically, there were times when the public management believers said that urban planning is an artificial thing. It doesn't work. We can't plan because the economic is so dynamic. Urban planners doesn't understand the market. Urban planners doesn't understand the social needs. And then gradually we start to transform our planning system. And how do we transform this planning system? I'm not clear enough, I know, but I try to do my best. I looked at the legal changes during the past 30 years, and it turns out that it was right after the political changes when we had a regulatory framework that defined the master plan, the configuration plan, the layout plan, the development region, so the basic spatial planning institutions. And then after we joined the EU, there was a system of legal changes which refer to the energetical requirements of buildings, which was basically about the sustainability term. So the EU proposed a team that transformed a little bit our legal system. And then later on, in 2012, two new planning institutions arose: the strategic turn, the integrated strategy, and the legal framework for participation. So generally speaking, the legislative bodies understand the need for social participation in order to create social legitimacy for spatial plans. And I'm not sure if you have this planning instrument, the city character booklet and the cityscape regulations, which were pretty recently introduced in 2017, which was basically understanding that the master plan can't really influence aesthetic questions or architectural questions. And they tried to develop a planning instrument that it's not regulatory by nature. It tries to interfere into building culture. It tries to reflect to the dynamics of the democratic transition in terms of aesthetics, because the democratic transition, the individual brought up individual ideas about architectural aesthetics, and how can we recreate a coherent cityscape? That was the question. And it's not a regulatory framework that can ensure this, rather something that shows an example how to interfere or how to build. This planning system evolved. We introduced, we have now, I don't know, 7 planning instruments. Part of them was emerging in modernism. Part of them, like the strategic plan, emerged in postmodern. These are 2 different planning paradigms. Still, it is a coherent system right now, but it's not obvious. There has been a gradual change in the planning system. Meanwhile, we crossed paradigmatic boundaries. We moved from regulatory planning instruments like master plan to strategic planning instruments like the integrated development strategy. Still, it seems that there is a coherent system that we have to use. Anyway, I think if we looked at this overview, there are questions that we have to answer. And one set of questions arises from the fact that the planning system over this 30 years changed faster than the 100 years before. So it's an extremely fast change in the planning system. And from this fact, a lot of question arises. Can we design an effective planning system in a massively changing social, political, and economic environment? Everything is changing. Over the past 30 years, we have, I don't know, 10 interference with the planning framework. We have adjusted the planning framework 10 times, like in every 3 years, we change somehow the planning system. Can it be effective? Or do we have a choice? If everything changes so fast, then can we allow not to change the planning framework so fast? And if we change so fast, how can we make sure that the actors involved, planners, bureaucracy, civil society, the market, can learn how to use these planning instruments properly? And are we sure, the next question, are we sure that we introduce these instruments in the right time? For example, in 2012, the new planning regulatory framework introduced the participatory framework for planning. Are we sure that the society is capable of participating in planning processes in a meaningful way? Or was it too early? Or what are the tools to involve the civil society in a meaningful way? Is it enough to introduce this framework in legal terms, or do we have to make like booklets how to make participation in planning? And the other question is that the planning system is becoming ever more complex, maybe too complex. If we try to integrate a lot of issues into the spatial planning system, then maybe the planning framework will be too complex and less effective. And how can we differentiate between problems? Some problems require more complex planning answers. Some problems are simply enough so that we don't need that complex planning processes. And just one more point to wrap up regarding to COVID and the climate change issue. That basically climate change and basically COVID is a spatial issue, in my understanding. And if we want to define what is the role of spatial planning in this, it is coming from the nature that these are spatial issues. For COVID, there are spatial answers for eliminating the problems of the pandemic. There are also spatial answers, and for that we need to spatially understand the pandemic. Thank you very much. I think I wasn't enough clear, but I guess that the presentation later on can explain itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dersh, because actually I think you have introduced my first question, because now the most important and most exciting part of tonight's event comes when we are going to allow a free conversation. And I've collected and we have discussed previously 3 important questions. And the first one was, just about what is the added value of this project regarding that we are working together. And I think also during the presentations, this already came clear, but I think it is really important to emphasize that. And it was very interesting because I don't know if that will be technically possible, but maybe later on we can share the results of tonight's event later on with the audience. But I've just made a very quick word cloud that might be seen for you as well. And this word cloud also contains a lot of interesting words about our own presentations and emphasizing the most important topics. Anyway, popping the first question, what do you think? What is the added value of working together as Visegrad 4 countries? Dash.
Yeah, I can start. I think
yes, you can start.
All right, we have discussed it after Magyar's presentation, and partly is definitely that position ourselves in the legislative process, because I think, or at least I try to highlight, I'm not sure if I was clear enough, that I think we are all in a position where we have to look at the past 30 years, and the government is looking at the past 30 years and try to reflect on the lessons that was learned. So we have to position ourselves to be part of this legislative process. And I think in multiple ways, also in advising the governments about issues directly, but also becoming part of this learning process and try to establish a learning process where the government releases a legislative framework, and then we see how it works or how it doesn't work.
Yes, for me it was a really very, very strong experience when we first came up with the idea of initiating a Visegrad Fund project. And I wrote just a few thoughts about the idea to all the partners, and it was really amazing that nearly everybody answered within half an hour and expressing their happiness. And I think it was Magyar who also called me, and we were in I don't know 15 minutes we were in a lively phone conversation and telling that cooperation would make our legislative voice also stronger. So it is something really important because we understand our own planning tradition and our historical background much better than anyone else in Europe.
Absolutely. No, and I think we have identified very some common topics. And I think we should work on that more.
Yes,
what
you're
are
right.
the common topics?
I think we could go on because you have also finished your presentation with emphasizing that the question which usually makes us think about pretty often, that there are a lot of economic, social challenges, and especially also the pandemic, which is usually not regarded by policymakers as an issue that could be solved with urban planning methods and tools. And well, what do you think? What are those topics, and what do you think? How we could make decision makers realize that issue?
You ask me.
Yeah, Maros has a good remark. Please go on.
Thank you. I'm reacting on Dersh, who pointed very important aspects as an added value of our exchange, which is positioning, joint professional positioning. But the effects of this joint professional positioning, Dersh pointed, was much more insight oriented towards influencing the development in our countries. And I guess we have to keep in mind as well our power concerning the specifics in our region against the outside environment. Still, in Europe, in the overall view, our region is to a big extent marginalized. We are not present in the European discussions properly because we are small. We are in the periphery. So the dominant discussions on European documents are going about Netherlands, in the past England, some think France and Germany, but our voice is really marginalized. Have a look at the projects which are under the ESPON. How many projects are financed in our countries? What are our chance to get ESPON project? When you look at the cause, we are completely marginalized in our chance to get through because they give the requirement to have some turnover. We are not able to achieve such turnover because our wages are so small that in the comparison with any firm in Netherlands or Belgium, we can dream about such big turnover. But this is the preconditions for entering even the call. So I guess we need even this power to demonstrate jointly outside. There are many of comparative studies of planning system. You can imagine 30 years after the change, there is just a big area appointed post-communistic planning system. It is not true. Yes, so
yeah, it's really ridiculous.
Problem, I guess we need to be together. Thank you.
Yes, I think it is very important what you say, Maros, because when we first talked about this, I think last year, a little bit more than a year ago, then we just had an experience that there was a call for Central European development trajectories and perspectives and the whole future perspective system, and it was won by a Belgian company.
Oh my God.
Not we were initiating or we were a part of that call. No, I think we were initiating that call, and we had a lot of Central European partners, also strong Polish partners and Slovakian partners, etc. But we didn't won.
Oh my God.
So this is really true, I think, without
it would
being offensive to anyone.
It would be even not a tragedy if there would be really a high quality consortium led by Western European partners. The problem is that those consortia are even not represented our countries or partners from our countries. And then when you look at the outputs of the analysis there, it's completely out of the reality in the territory. That's the problem.
Yes.
Joseph, yeah.
Yes.
You said something.
I just wanted to remark that we just won ESPON project or ESPON spin-off project based on the Compass project, which was an overview of European system of planning. And it's a very small project, like 35,000 euros. And it should help us to transform the outcomes of the ESPON project, or more specific on the Czech Republic. And also it talks about connections among spatial planning and strategic planning or regional development in general. And it also should help us on making better outcomes from the cohesion policy. As you mentioned, The contracting authority is from the Netherlands, but they are connected with our universities. So there are some chances. It's not big, but it still can help.
Congratulations, I should say, on that point.
Actually, if I might add something to that, the outcome of this project might also be to define a research project on Central Europe, the planning system of Central Europe, that might be represented by the Visegrad countries in Brussels. So we can also use this opportunity to create a framework that might introduce a core.
Yes, good idea. So anyway, our time is, I think, running out. So I think I should ask the last question regarding what do you think? Because we actually set up this whole event to define our most important questions to get answered within the project. And these would be the questions what we would address also during the autumn conference in Debrecen. So what do you think? And I would very much like you to emphasize one topic, each of you, or if multiple, that's not a problem either. So
May I start?
yes, Rich.
So we tried to put those three questions, but I think what is what would be most fruitful for us is the relationship between the strategical and spatial planning. I think we really see some shift in a way of thinking in our, let's say, on municipal and regional level, and we feel that the tools which are available in strategic way are very weak. You know, it is not interconnected with special planning. It is not interconnected with also the tax system, fiscal system, and those issues must be done much more, let's say, coordinated. You know, we realized with this faster and faster changes of planning law. I think we didn't have 10, but maybe 22 changes in this last 30 years. And it shows that this can be solved only within the special planning family. You know, we must go outside.
Thank you very much. I've noted. Yes, please.
May I join for a second?
Yes, of course.
Sorry, I stayed a bit silent, before, but I was listening to all the presentations, and what struck me is this focus on the, so to speak, political organization of planning systems, which we discussed. But what I would like to draw our attention to is the social and economic differences in planning in our parts of the world than to the Western Europe, so to speak. Which means that we are living in the, first of all, still a kind of liberal society. I mean, economically liberal society. I would say even ultra-liberal society from the economic point of view. But on the with the very little input from the public sector into the mode of the development. I mean, look at the mode of the housing production, an example in our part of the world, and Germany, just to take it as a point of comparison, so to speak. But there is also another thing, which means that there are different social implications for planning, which are coming from our history and also from our previous political system, which I think this is very, very important difference between, again, German, French, or Spanish system and our system, so to speak, right? I mean, again, we are not talking about the social activity in a good sense of that, but in many cases we are speaking about just the stakeholders who are taking floor to articulate their businesses and how to deal with the particular thing. So so that I mean, all of those imply that we are actually living in a, so to speak, parallel reality to some extent. And this parallel reality needs a slightly different approach. And it has to be noticed also by the other European countries, because it's just different, I would say, socioeconomic environment in which we are doing our planning. And just copy-paste kind of system from Germany or from UK or from France just doesn't work in our realities. I mean, even in Poland, I can tell you we have a kind of surprising sentence that we have a building law, but we have some regions in Poland which this does not apply to, because the local communities just, they do not believe this is real, okay? So they are still building, but the building law is something, I would say, abstract for these guys. So Tomek knows what I'm talking about. So we have those examples also internally present in Poland, but I would like to draw your attention to these more general differences between, so to speak, our planning systems, which are not coming from just, you know, different legislation, but they're coming from the different understanding of the economy and the role of the society and the role of the public sector. And I think this is important part of the whole story, just to contribute after an hour and a half of the discussion.
Piotr, you are a sociologist, or what's
I'm
your
just
profession?
humble architect and planner.
Great to discover.
I like this term, parallel reality. That's the
Yeah, this is just great, and I wanted to say that it is just great to realize that you have, once again, and I'm repeating myself, experiences exactly the same problems like we are in Hungary. I mean, we are again and again talking about the same issues all over again.
But I'm sorry, Flora, to interrupt you. I mean, the question is whether this is good or bad, which is another story, you know.
Yes. I think, well, it's paradoxal, but I think it is also a good thing to realize that we have common bad things. Anyway, Maros, you had a remark.
Just two sentences, not to forget my position as the president of Association of European Schools of Planning. Not only in our countries, but all over the Europe, we have big problem with the marginalization of the spatial planner education. Those study fields are at the university under big pressure. So we need really very strong voice from the professional organization towards it, and the collaboration with them in formulating clear quality criteria for the curricula in spatial planning. In this European discussion, our countries are rather marginalized, so we need to collaborate as well in the frame of ECTP, or together with, for example, Piotr as the vice president of the ISACAR, and really to be present in the discussion. Perhaps recently is not such an urgent issue, because this idea of regulating our profession is a bit over. But independently from this, now are starting the discussion on formulating the minimal requirements, which can then frame the free movement of the professionals in Europe. So these are two interlinked issues, which is for the future of planning very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think this is really important, because change begins with the young professionals starting their careers in urban planning, because they are the ones who will define a lot of things in the next 30, 40 years from now on. And I think that the young professionals, to involve them in this kind of knowledge exchange is really highly important and relevant as well. So I think as I watch the time, I think I give the word to Dev, and then we will get the closing remarks, and that's all.
I'm a bit surprised. I should give the closing remarks. Then.
No, I will give the closing remarks. No.
Why do I get the floor? No, I can share my thoughts because
Your most important question in this topic.
Oh, okay.
You forget the role of ladies. They need to have the final word. Only the fourth final.
I'm sorry, otherwise I'm an educated husband. I know my place in the family. But thank you. Thank you. No, I just thought while Maros was raising the issue of education, is that really, if we think about this paradigm shift that Pete was referring to, from a master plan to a strategy, from comprehensive planning, spatial planning to strategic planning paradigm. It starts with the education. I'm just scared a bit to open up discussion this field, but it's a relevant field, and I'm scared because I don't know how wide we can open up this discussion, because more and more I think that there should be a long-term cooperation between these organizations. So we just found a lot of issues to work together. Maros spoke about the framework of our profession. We are working on our framework of profession at the moment. We want to redefine what urban planner means. We want to redefine what are the relevant knowledge, what is the relevant knowledge for urban planning. So it's again a field that we can work together. But just coming back to our subject, I was to suggest that we might come up with topics that might be cross-cutting, that we want to deeper examine during the next course of working together. Do you agree with that, or do you like this idea?
Absolutely.
I don't want to.
Absolutely. I think this is something we can agree on. And well, I think that was all for today, if you agree. And we thank for those who have joined us for this very exciting and very, very fruitful conversation. And we hope that even more we watch the video afterwards. And also, this is the very festive moment where we invite all of those interested in the topic to our special Visegrad 4 session that we are going to have at the National Conference of Urban Planners in Debrecen, in Hungary, on the 21st and 22nd of October. More information will follow soon, and until so far, we are here. You can connect us, and we would be happy to involve others also into this discussion and discourse. And well, thank you very much. Have a nice evening, and see you another time.
In Debrecen.
Yes, for sure, Debrecen. for a beer.
Or two.
Or two.
Thank you for organizing this nice event. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.